The courtroom was silent, save for the distant hum of the air recyclers. Lucas Quinn stood alone in the center, the harsh lights casting unforgiving shadows across his chiseled features. His once proud uniform hung loosely on his frame, now a symbol of disgrace rather than honor. The judges, a stern panel of high-ranking officials, looked down upon him with a mixture of disdain and pity. "You are hereby found guilty of war crimes against humanity," the lead judge intoned, his voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "For your actions, you are sentenced to exile. You will be taken from this place and sent to an uncharted region of space. May you find peace there, for you will find none here." Lucas felt a hollow ache in his chest. He had once been a decorated soldier, a hero of countless battles. But the war had changed him, had twisted his sense of duty into something dark and unrecognizable. He had crossed lines that should never be crossed, and now he was paying the ultimate price. Two guards approached, their faces expressionless beneath their visors. They clasped his arms, leading him out of the courtroom and into a sterile hallway. As they walked, Lucas couldn't help but glance at the walls, adorned with holographic images of past glories and victories. Each image was a painful reminder of what he had lost. The journey to the launch site was a blur. He was strapped into a small spacecraft, his restraints tight and unyielding. The engine roared to life, and with a jolt, he was propelled into the void of space. He watched through the viewport as Earth shrank into a distant blue dot, the only home he had ever known fading into the blackness. Alone in the silence of space, Lucas contemplated his fate. He was a soldier without a war, a leader without a cause. The vast expanse of the universe stretched out before him, a cold and indifferent reminder of his exile. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the darkness, and let the ship carry him to whatever unknown destiny awaited. The ship's alarms blared, jolting Lucas from his restless slumber. He scrambled to his feet, his muscles protesting after days of inactivity. The control panel flashed warnings in urgent red, and he realized with a sinking feeling that the ship was entering the atmosphere of an unknown planet. He braced himself as the vessel shook violently, flames licking at the windows as it plummeted through the sky. With a deafening crash, the ship hit the ground. Lucas was thrown against his restraints, his vision swimming. The world outside was a blur of strange colors and shapes. He struggled to release himself from the seat, his hands trembling as he fumbled with the buckles. Finally free, he stumbled to the hatch and forced it open, the cool air of the alien planet rushing in. He emerged into a landscape unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering purple trees loomed overhead, their leaves shimmering with iridescent hues. The ground was covered in a thick, spongy moss that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Strange creatures scurried through the underbrush, their eyes gleaming with curiosity. Before he could take it all in, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. He turned to see a group of humanoid figures emerging from the forest. They were tall and lithe, with skin that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their eyes, large and luminous, watched him with a mixture of caution and awe. One of them stepped forward, a staff in hand, and began to speak in a melodic, unfamiliar language. Lucas raised his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. "I come in peace," he said, hoping they would understand. The leader of the group studied him for a moment, then gestured for the others to lower their weapons. They approached him cautiously, their eyes wide with wonder. One of them reached out to touch his armor, their fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into the metal. Lucas tried to communicate, using gestures and expressions to convey his intentions. Slowly, they seemed to understand. They led him through the forest, their path winding through a landscape of breathtaking beauty. He marveled at the bioluminescent plants that lit their way, casting a soft glow over everything. As they walked, he learned more about his surroundings. The planet, Zarathor, was rich with life and mystery. The people, known as the Zarathorians, were a peaceful and spiritual race. They had no technology to speak of, relying instead on their deep connection with the natural world. They brought him to their village, a cluster of huts nestled in a clearing. The villagers gathered to see the newcomer, their eyes filled with curiosity. The leader of the group spoke to them in their melodic language, and the crowd murmured in response. Lucas felt a sense of unease, wondering what they were saying about him. Then, to his surprise, they began to bow. One by one, the villagers knelt before him, their heads bowed in reverence. The leader approached him, holding out the staff as if in offering. Lucas hesitated, then took the staff, feeling its weight in his hands.
"You are our protector," the leader said in halting, accented English. "You are the one we have been waiting for."
Days turned into weeks as Lucas settled into life on Zarathor. The initial awe of the villagers slowly transformed into a deep-seated respect and trust. They taught him their language, a melodic and rhythmic tongue that seemed to flow like the streams running through their forest. In turn, he shared with them knowledge of tactics, survival, and combat, skills that were second nature to him, but alien to this peaceful race. The Zarathorians revered him as a divine protector, a role he struggled to accept. He had never sought worship or adulation. He had simply done his duty as a soldier, yet here he was, seen as a savior by a people who had never known war. It was a heavy mantle to bear, but one he wore with growing acceptance. One evening, as the twin moons of Zarathor rose high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the village, Lucas sat with the village elder, a wise and ancient being named Thaler. The firelight danced in Thaler's eyes as he spoke. "You carry the weight of many worlds on your shoulders," Thaler said, his voice a soothing whisper. "But you must learn to let go of your past if you are to embrace your future here." Lucas stared into the flames, lost in thought. "I was a soldier," he replied. "I fought for my people, but I made mistakes. I was exiled because of them." Thaler nodded slowly. "We all carry burdens of our past actions. But this world, Zarathor, offers you a chance for redemption. To protect us is to protect yourself. To heal our wounds is to heal your own." The weeks that followed were filled with training and preparation. Lucas organized the villagers into defensive units, teaching them the basics of combat and strategy. He crafted makeshift weapons from the resources available, blending Zarathorian craftsmanship with his own knowledge of military engineering. During this time, he grew particularly close to Elora, the beautiful daughter of Thaler. She was intelligent and fiercely independent, her spirit as wild as the forests of Zarathor. They spent hours together, sharing stories of their worlds, their lives intertwined by the threads of fate. One day, while they were training near a crystal-clear lake, a group of hostile creatures emerged from the forest, their eyes glowing with malevolence. Lucas sprang into action, directing the villagers to form a defensive line. The battle was fierce, but under his leadership, the Zarathorians fought with a newfound strength and unity. As the last of the creatures retreated, Elora approached him, her eyes filled with admiration. "You are truly our protector," she said softly. "Without you, we would be lost." He looked at her, seeing not just the leader's daughter, but a brave and compassionate woman who had become an essential part of his new life. "I am honored to stand with you," he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. That night, under the twin moons, the villagers celebrated their victory. There was music and dancing, the air filled with laughter and joy. Lucas watched as the people he had come to care for reveled in their newfound strength. As the celebration reached its peak, Thaler stood and called for silence. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our victory, but the union of our protector and my daughter," he announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. "They will marry, and together they will lead us into a new era of peace and prosperity." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Lucas felt a swell of emotion. He looked at Elora, who smiled at him with a mixture of shyness and determination. In that moment, he knew he had found a new purpose, a new family, and a new home. Lucas Quinn awoke to the soft glow of the twin moons filtering through the woven roof of his hut. He had grown accustomed to the rhythmic lull of Zarathor's nights, a stark contrast to the sleepless, tension-filled nights he had endured on Earth. Today, however, an unsettling feeling gnawed at him. He stepped outside, greeted by the tranquil beauty of the village. The Zarathorians moved about their morning routines, their melodic language and gentle laughter filling the air. Yet there was a tension beneath the surface, a sense of foreboding that Lucas couldn't shake. Elora approached him, her eyes reflecting the same unease. "Lucas, there have been sightings of strange creatures near the borders. Our scouts reported unusual movements in the forest. Lucas nodded, his instincts kicking in. The meeting took place in the heart of the village, beneath the ancient tree of life, its branches a symbol of unity and strength. Thaler, Alora, and the other council members listened intently as Lucas outlined his concerns. "We've trained hard, but we must remain vigilant," Lucas began. "The creatures we fought before were just the beginning. There are other forces out there, drawn to Zarathor's resources. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for the worst." Thaler's wise eyes met Lucas's. "We trust your judgment, Lucas. What do you suggest?" Lucas outlined a plan to reinforce the village's perimeter with traps and watchtowers. He proposed regular patrols and the establishment of safe zones for the villagers to retreat to in case of an attack. The council agreed, their trust in him unwavering. Days turned into weeks as the village transformed into a fortified haven. The Zarathorians, under Lucas's guidance, worked tirelessly, their resolve unbroken, yet the threat loomed closer each day. Scouts reported increased activity in the surrounding forests, strange otherworldly creatures prowling the edges of their territory. One night, as Lucas stood watch atop a newly constructed tower, Alora joined him. She handed him a steaming cup of herbal tea, a local brew that calmed his nerves. "You've done so much for us, Lucas," she said softly, "but I worry for you. You carry the weight of our safety on your shoulders." He took a sip, savoring the warmth. "It's what I do, Alora. I'm a soldier. Protecting people is all I've ever known." She placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. Before he could respond, a distant howl pierced the night. Lucas's muscles tensed, and he scanned the horizon. Shadows moved at the forest's edge, and his heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and dread. "Sound the alarm," he ordered. "They're here." The village erupted into action as the alarm reverberated through the air. Zarathorians, now trained in combat, took their positions. Lucas moved with precision, his military experience guiding his every step. Alara followed closely, her bow and arrows at the ready. The first wave of creatures emerged from the forest, their eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. Lucas shouted commands, directing the villagers to hold their lines. The battle was fierce and chaotic, the air thick with the sounds of clashing weapons and primal roars. Lucas fought tirelessly, his advanced weaponry cutting through the enemy ranks. But for every creature they felled, more seemed to take their place. The villagers fought bravely, their unity a testament to Lucas's training, but the onslaught was relentless. In the midst of the chaos, a horn sounded from the north. Lucas glanced up to see a group of figures approaching, their forms obscured by the shadows. For a moment, his heart sank, fearing another wave of enemies. But as they drew closer, he recognized their attire, warriors from a neighboring tribe. Their leader, a towering figure with scarred features, raised his hand in a gesture of peace. "We come to aid you, Lucas Quinn. We have seen the smoke and heard the cries. Your fight is ours." Lucas nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you. We need all the help we can get." With the reinforcements, the tide of the battle began to turn. The combined forces pushed back the creatures, driving them into the forest. As the last of the enemy fled, a weary cheer rose from the villagers. The immediate threat had been repelled, but Lucas knew it was far from over. Later, around a crackling fire, Lucas met with the leader of the allied tribe. "I am Rayler," the man introduced himself. "Our lands have also been plagued by these creatures. We believe they are drawn by a darker force, something that seeks to control Zarathor." Lucas listened intently, the pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. "We need to unite our tribes," he said. "Together we can stand against whatever is coming." Raylor agreed, and over the next few days, the two tribes forged a fragile alliance. Yet Lucas remained wary. Not all were pleased with this union. Whispers of dissent and mistrust echoed in the shadows. He had to navigate not only the external threats, but also the internal conflicts that threatened to unravel their fragile peace. As Lucas patrolled the village one evening, he encountered a group of villagers arguing. At the center of the dispute was a man named Varric, a vocal opponent of the alliance. "We don't need them," Varric spat. Their presence brings more danger. We can defend ourselves without outsiders. Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Varric's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more, turning and stalking away. Lucas watched him go, knowing that the true battle was just beginning. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of diplomacy and defense. Lucas worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between the two tribes, mediating disputes and fostering a sense of unity. He knew that only by standing together could they hope to survive the coming storm. The marriage between Lucas and Alara, initially a symbol of unity, became a beacon of hope for both tribes. Preparations for the wedding were elaborate, combining the traditions of both cultures. The Zarathorians adorned the village with luminescent flowers and intricate tapestries, while the warriors from Raylor's tribe contributed their own rituals and symbols of strength. On the day of the ceremony, the village was transformed into a vibrant tapestry of colors and sounds. The air was filled with the scent of exotic flowers and the harmonious blend of Zarathorian music with the rhythmic drumming of Rallar's people. Lucas stood at the center of it all, dressed in a ceremonial robe that combined elements of his Earth heritage with Zarathorian elegance. Elora appeared, radiant in a flowing gown that shimmered like the stars. She walked towards Lucas, her eyes locked with his, and for a moment the weight of their burdens seemed to lift, replaced by a profound sense of connection and purpose. Thaler, standing between them, raised his hands. "Today, we unite not just two people, but two worlds," he declared. "In this union, we find strength and hope for the future." As Lucas and Alara exchanged vows, pledging to protect and cherish each other, the villagers and warriors cheered, their voices merging into a single harmonious chorus. The ceremony concluded with a traditional Zarathorian dance, symbolizing the harmony of the elements and the unity of their people. But even as they celebrated, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The threats they faced were far from vanquished, and he knew that the real battle lay ahead. That night, as he and Alara stood together under the twin moons, Lucas voiced his concerns. "I fear our enemies are growing stronger," he said. "We must be ready for anything." Alara nodded, her hand resting on his. In the days that followed, the alliance between the tribes grew, fortified by the shared goal of survival. Lucas continued to train the villagers and warriors, honing their skills and preparing them for the inevitable conflict. He worked closely with Raylar, strategizing and fortifying their defenses. Yet tensions simmered beneath the surface. Varric and his followers grew increasingly vocal, their mistrust of the outsiders threatening to undermine the fragile unity. Lucas knew he had to address this internal threat before it tore them apart. During a heated council meeting, Varric stood, his face flushed with anger. "We are being led to our doom by outsiders," he declared. "We must reclaim our independence." Lucas stepped forward, his gaze steady. The council murmured in agreement, but Varric was not convinced. "Mark my words, Quinn. This alliance will bring nothing but destruction." The meeting adjourned, but the tension lingered. Lucas knew he had to find a way to bridge the gap, to show Varric and his followers that unity was their only hope. That night, as he walked the perimeter of the village, he encountered Raylar. "Your people are restless," Raylar observed. "The seeds of dissent are dangerous." Lucas nodded. "I know. We must find a way to bring them together." Raylar's eyes gleamed with a thoughtful light. "Perhaps a demonstration of our combined strength is in order. A joint mission, something that proves our unity and capability." Lucas considered this. "A raid on the enemy encampment," he suggested. "A strike to weaken their forces and gather intelligence." Raylar smiled. "It will be risky, but it could be exactly what we need." The plan was set. Lucas and Raylar assembled a team of the best warriors from both tribes, including Alara, whose skill with a bow was unmatched. They moved through the forest under the cover of darkness, their movements silent and coordinated. As they approached the enemy encampment, Lucas felt a surge of adrenaline. This was what he was trained for, what he excelled at. He signaled the team to halt, surveying the camp from a hidden vantage point. The creatures milled about, oblivious to the impending attack. With a nod, Lucas gave the signal, and the team sprang into action. They moved with precision and speed, taking down the enemy guards and sabotaging their supplies. The raid was swift and effective, a testament to their training and unity. As they retreated back to the village, Lucas felt a sense of accomplishment. The mission had been a success, and more importantly, it had shown both tribes the power of their alliance. Back at the village, the team was met with cheers and applause. Varric, though still wary, could not deny the success of the mission. Lucas approached him, extending a hand. "We need you, Varric. Your strength, your wisdom. Together we can protect our home." Varric hesitated, then clasped Lucas's hand. Lucas nodded. For Zarathor, the alliance was solidified, the bond between the tribes stronger than ever. But Lucas knew that the real test was still to come. The enemy was out there, growing stronger, and he had to be ready for whatever lay ahead. But for the first time in a long time, he felt hope. In the aftermath of the battle, the village was a scene of both celebration and mourning. The defenders had fought valiantly, but many lives had been lost. Lucas moved through the village, offering words of comfort and gratitude to the survivors. The bonds forged in the heat of battle had created a sense of unity that would endure. However, Lucas knew that the threat was not entirely vanquished. The dark energy that Korak had wielded was a reminder of a greater danger still lurking in the shadows. He needed to ensure that Zarathor would never again face such a threat. One evening, as he and Alara sat by the fire, Lucas confided his concerns. "There's something I need to do," he said quietly. "Korak's power came from a source beyond this world. If we don't destroy it, others will come." Alora's eyes widened with fear and understanding.
"You're talking about the Dark Nexus."
Lucas nodded. "I've heard the stories. It's a place of immense power hidden deep within the mountains. If I can find it and destroy it, we'll be safe." "You can't go alone," Alora insisted. "It's too dangerous." Lucas took her hand, his gaze steady. "I have to. This is my fight, my chance for redemption. I can't risk anyone else." Alora's eyes filled with tears. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," Lucas said, though he wasn't sure he could keep it. The journey to the Dark Nexus was treacherous. Lucas traveled through rugged terrain, facing harsh elements and deadly creatures. Each step brought him closer to his goal, but also to his own limits. His thoughts were filled with memories of the village, of Alora and the people he had come to love. Their faces fueled his determination. Finally, he reached the entrance to the Dark Nexus, a cavern shrouded in darkness. As he stepped inside, he felt the oppressive weight of the dark energy, a palpable force that sought to consume him. He pressed on, his resolve unyielding. At the heart of the cavern he found it, a pulsating, malevolent orb, the source of Korak's power, the Dark Nexus. Lucas approached it cautiously, knowing that destroying it would not be easy. He placed charges around the orb, his hands steady despite the energy that crackled around him. As he set the final charge, the orb reacted violently, tendrils of dark energy lashing out. Lucas was thrown back, pain searing through his body. He struggled to his feet, his vision blurred. He knew he had to detonate the charges, even if it meant sacrificing himself. With a final, desperate effort, he activated the detonator. The cavern shook with a deafening explosion as the charges went off, the dark energy consuming the orb in a blinding flash. Lucas felt himself being pulled into the darkness, his strength fading. His last thoughts were of Alora, of the promise he had made. He hoped that his sacrifice would give her and the people of Zarathor the future they deserved. The sun rose over Zarathor, casting a warm glow over the village. The people moved about their day with a renewed sense of hope and purpose. The battle had been won, and the dark energy that had threatened their world was gone. Alara stood at the edge of the village, her eyes scanning the horizon. It had been weeks since Lucas had left, and though she had feared the worst, she held on to the hope that he would return. As the sun reached its zenith, a figure appeared in the distance. Alora's heart leapt as she recognized the silhouette. Lucas. He was battered and weary, but alive. She ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "You came back," she whispered, throwing her arms around him. "I promised," Lucas replied, holding her close. The village erupted in celebration as Lucas returned. He recounted his journey to the Dark Nexus, the battle he had fought, and the victory he had won. The people cheered, their gratitude and admiration for their protector unwavering. In the days that followed, the village began to rebuild. The alliance between the tribes grew stronger, their unity a beacon of hope for the future. Lucas and Alara led them with wisdom and compassion, their bond an example of the strength that could be found in unity. Lucas stood at the edge of the village one evening, watching the twin moons rise. Alara joined him, her hand slipping into his. "What do you see?" she asked softly. "A future," Lucas replied, his voice filled with conviction. Alara smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the moons. Lucas nodded, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. He had found his place, his purpose, and his redemption. Zarathor was more than a new beginning, it was home. Together, they faced the future, their hearts united in hope and determination. And as the stars shone brightly above, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side.